You know, Jim, the last caller, just wanted you to hit real briefly, if you would, real quickly. He was the one who asked about the bonds and how you had called in. If you would just say again briefly that the issue here on people waiting and staying behind bars when they can't afford bond, and what you weighed in on there for him. Yeah.
So you know, there's an issue around the country called bail reform. There's a lot of places being challenged over housing people primarily because they can't afford to get out, that they're poor, and jails aren't supposed to be doing that. And so there's a group called Civil Rights Corps, and they're challenging a lot of jurisdictions. Houston, Texas, and Nashville is surely in their eyes. And really what they're asking all of us to do is to say, wait, why are you holding Nick Barris on a shoplifting case? This bond's $1,000. He has no ability to pay $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you may question, well then, why do you leave him in jail? The only reason you're leaving him is because he can't afford it. Yeah. And that's really not what jail's about.
Yeah, explain. The reason you want him behind bars is because they need to be there, maybe because they're a danger to society at that moment, like Travis Rankin. Right. Okay? He shouldn't go anywhere, and he's staying put. But I don't want to be paying for these dudes behind bars if they're really not a threat, and the only reason they're sitting there is they've got a bond they can't make. I mean, if you're a taxpayer, come on. Why would you want to keep paying for that if he's not a threat?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds so basic.
Or flight risk.
Right. There's two reasons. I mean, and our Constitution really guarantees that you're innocent until proven guilty. You have a right to bail, and what that really means is bail doesn't mean you have to pay. The state of Kentucky outlawed bail bondsmen in '72, and the state of California this week, I just read it, is now outlawed commercial bail industry. Yeah. And the reason for that is that you should want Nick Barris, if he's arrested today, to have a chance in court. Okay, let's agree with that. But there's no reason why you should have to stay in jail awaiting that. All sorts of evidence is that if you stay in jail awaiting a trial, the likelihood that your sentence is longer, you lose your job, your family, and so forth. You and I could be arrested for the same exact thing. I go in, I get released, and you await trial. 6 months later, go to court on shoplifting. I go to court on shoplifting. What happens to me in court is very clear. It's different than what happens to you. You have a better chance to be successful in court. I don't mean beat it, but I'm just talking about get your case resolved. So what bail bondsmen typically do, bail industry do, is they don't want anyone released unless you pay. Well, the point is, paying for bail is no evidence. There's no evidence that reduces the likelihood that you're going to reoffend or more likely appear in court. We do pretrial release. You don't pay one dime for that. We have about a 6% failure to appear rate. That's extremely low. Some cities have 40% failure to appear. So we believe that you should be free to go until you get to court. If you're convicted, then pay your price. We're all for that. But the society we live in somewhat forgets that the job of the jail is to house people who are a risk to flee, meaning you're not going to stay and come to court, and or you're a risk to the community directly. I mean, ranking. But if you're downtown and you're charged with trespassing because you were sleeping on the sidewalk you shouldn't have been on, the chances are that you're not bothering this community if you're allowed to be released. Now, if you go right back down there and violate it, they can bring you to jail. But it's a waste of resources.
Makes sense to me. Let's go to Joy. Hi, Joy. Good morning to you.
Yes.
Hi, Joy. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is I have been a resident of Nashville for 12 years. I really like it here, but last year I had an incident with an apartment complex. I'm in court right now with them in circuit court. I went from general sessions to circuit court because the sheriff's department had informed me that I had medication and identification, birth certificate, driver's license, and everything in my apartment, that when the management went in, they removed those items while I was at work. What I want to know is, I'm the only person that has been paying out of my pocket to keep this case going. I felt like I have a right to know what happened to my driver's license, my checkbook, credit cards. This apartment complex left me homeless, and I'm fighting for something that I believe that eventually I hope I'll win.
So you're saying, so you're just so I'm clear, so you're saying that sometimes in the extreme cases, sheriff's departments have to take a role. So you were evicted, and while you were gone, they went in and cleaned out your stuff from your apartment and evicted you from your apartment?
Well, what had happened was when I went to court, the judge and we had all made an agreement for me to stay in my apartment. The management exchanged to another management company, and in the process I got shuffled in like I didn't pay my rent, which could have been proven in court. I haven't had a chance yet to do that.
Okay. And you were able to get your driver's license back? Did you get it back?
No, sir. No. That's why I'm still in court. Everything was stolen, and nobody wants to take responsibility for anything.
Okay. Wow. That can be tricky.
Yeah, so here's what I would know about a case like that. You know, the Sheriff's Office is the agency that oversees what is called a civil process. This exact case. Okay. The courts notify Nick that your landlord wants you to pay your rent. You're past due, or you haven't done that. We go out, we give you notice, Nick, here's a notice from the court, you need to pay your fees or come to court or rectify the situation. This happens months on end.
I know. You've said this before to me, that it's before you guys actually physically start removing stuff. I mean, there are chance after chance after chance.
It is months of work, and the courts, and so we're ordered by the court to do what we're doing. And so I'm not disputing Joy. I don't know what happened in that case, but what we would do is we would receive an eviction order from a court after you've been put on notice multiple times, and then what we do is we go to the scene. We do not touch anyone's property. That's not our role at all. We're there to ensure that transaction occurs in what you would call a peaceful way. Yeah. And so how does that work? The landlord in this case hires a moving company because that's what they own the property. They deserve that. The court have ordered you out. So we're there to ensure that transaction takes place. Now, she may have a valid point about what was taken or moved or whatever, but the court is ordering her stuff removed because certain steps haven't been accomplished, and the owner of the property has a right to have their own business functions take place. So that moving of your stuff occurred by a moving company, I'm sure. We would have been on the scene, as we would in any case, if that was what happened. And again, it sounds like a good court case to get in front of, but you know, these things take months on end to get resolved because the court has given you notice and ample time to get your stuff situated. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm not saying that Joy did anything wrong, because I don't know. You're welcome to call the office if you're in court already about it, then that may be a little different, but be happy to try to get you an answer from our end. But our role there is to ensure that you, the landlord, have hired a moving company. We don't physically touch one thing. We don't touch it.
You just step in if there's, for instance, what you're implying is that there could be a situation where the homeowner then say, hey, you're not taking that, don't touch that, and then it can get physical, and you have to make sure things stay peaceful. We're
the arm of the court. We're doing what the court has ordered to happen. We're not in the middle of choosing who's paid and who hadn't. The court has ordered us to remove you.
Gotcha. All right, let's go to, here he is, Joe. Good morning, Joe. How are you, Joe?
Okay, Nick.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Sheriff. Just to agree with you 100% on your mental problem we've got here, and I'll make a brief statement, and I've got a question. The Middle Tennessee Health Institute, I live not too far from it, and it's not really set up to handle prisoners like what this guy, the Waffle House shooter's going to be, because those people out there are really not, like a guard or people that you have working for you at the jail. But they've had several instances of fights, people getting injured, and even had some escapes from out there. But
so do you worry about living as close as you do, Joe? Do you worry about having an inmate accused of this type of crime being moved out there?
I do, because when it was built or whatever and set up, it never was the old Central State, as the sheriff is well aware of, was quite a bit different. Of course, it was from a different era, but this new one is really not an ideal place for this kind of thing that's been, holding prisoners like that. But that being said, the other question I've got for the sheriff is, I know that when you have an inmate at the prison system, that they have a locker board at General Hospital, they have a guard stationed out there all the time for that that floor in that hospital. But whenever they have to, if something comes up that general hospital can't handle, they have to take them to an outside hospital like Centennial, St. Thomas, Vanderbilt, somewhere like that. They have to send two guards with them, and they have to stay with them all the time that they're in an outside hospital. How is the sheriff's department set up to handle that situation?
Is that right? Is it usually two guards?
Yeah, Joe is, man, I tell you what, he impresses me every time. He's right on about that. The difference is, and I don't think he said this wrong, but I mean, when they transfer the custody, keep in mind what the court is saying is that he's not competent to stand trial in the criminal justice system. Well, that severs our role because now...
That doesn't mean he's not dangerous.
Right. But the state of Tennessee is responsible for his care, his competency, and so forth. And basically what's being said is this is a mental health issue. It's not a criminal justice issue. If that same philosophy would apply to the 80 people that will be booked today that are mentally ill for shoplifting and trespassing, and take those folks and the money it takes to do it and treat them for their mental illness, maybe we wouldn't end up with Travis ranking. I mean, the point is, they're willing to do it, and I'm not blaming a person. Once you have a mass murderer and you're talking about competency, the reality is there are people booked every day in this jail who aren't competent either. They're not. I mean, let a naked man walk into the airport and buy a ticket for the...
Exactly.
Well, you're not competent to know that you had to wear clothes. Right. Well, how are you competent to understand a judge saying, you'll be back to court next Tuesday?
So you're basically saying there's a bunch of folks that probably are just as incompetent as Travis ranking.
There's no doubt about that.
And they're not being sent to Tennessee, Middle Tennessee mental health.
There's no doubt about it. Now the level of crime, you know, there's been an issue. I think misdemeanor crimes are no longer done, you know, for reasons that the state years ago decided not to pay for competency hearings. This is what I understand. And I think Joe is right about the issue and concerns about a place like Middle Tennessee Mental Health. When I say right, it may be concerns because they don't handle large numbers of people. So maybe they're good at it, maybe they're not. But it's a disappointment for me that society is willing to let the guy. We have a guy arrested 596 times. Okay, in Nashville, 596 times. There is no way in the world that that individual, who by the way is diagnosed mentally ill, he's not competent to understand what the laws and the rules are. He's also, I'm sure, duly diagnosed with all sorts of self-medicated problems. And I'm not trying to excuse his behavior. I'm just saying, wait a minute. I mean, if you're going to reach in and say this guy is incompetent and he shouldn't be tried, and obviously he's potentially going to lose his life to his charge if he were convicted. But I don't care. I mean, my point is, why aren't you as worried about the person who's being booked in jail who's naked in the airport? But we're willing to take him to court and convict him for 20 days for indecent exposure. He didn't know to wear clothes. Why do you believe it's suitable to convict a person of charges that they have no idea what the law is?
All right. On that note, we'll take a break. When we come back, more right after this.